Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, I'm delighted to have a guest on the other end of this virtual line with a camera. But this day, I'm even more delighted because a very, very good friend of mine from the travel industry. It's Jonathan Sloan. So, good morning, Jonathan.
Morning, Graham. Great to be chatting to you this morning. How are you?
Not too bad. Jonathan, just give us a brief resume for those. I think there's probably at least half a dozen people in the world that don't know you and don't know what you did or what you do in the travel industry. Perhaps you can give me a quick resume.
Yeah, of course. A lifelong tourism folk. Started off in hotels, moved into PR and representation in about the mid-90s. Worked for an agency called McCluskey's, which sadly no longer is with us. Did a couple of other in-house roles, but then started at Hills Balfour, and I was there for almost 20 years. And then the Hills Balfour was acquired by MMGY, a US agency, along with Grifco and a company called Digital Spring. And we are now all as one, MMGY UK. And that sort of brings me up to where I am. I have always, and most people probably know me in the industry as being part of PR and representation side of the business. About 2 years ago, within the MMGY family, I moved over to set up a media and creative department within the agency. So I'm still in tourism, but in a kind of very different
A
sector.
different way, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's good. As I said, I think most people know about you that are in the travel and tourism industry, particularly here in the UK. And your specialist area in the past was probably the USA. But you have suffered from a little bit of illness. I say little bit; it's a bit more than a little bit. Perhaps you can give me a sort of again a brief summary of what's happened to you, when did it start, and where are you at now?
Sure. It was, well, I remember the day, and I think anyone else that has this will always remember the day. It was the 9th of February 2022. I was actually on a work trip in the US, visiting our office in Kansas City. And I noticed on the flight back, my leg started swelling. So of course, went along to the doctors, and actually, I was having to stay in a hotel because I'd come back from this trip and all my family had COVID, so I couldn't go home. But anyway, I went to the doctors thinking nothing of it, and was given a cancer diagnosis, a stage 4 bladder cancer diagnosis. And it all went pretty haywire from there. I mean, literally, the diagnosis on the 9th, I was in having biopsies the next day, operations the next week. And it's been a pretty much a roller coaster 2.5 years since then.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that's been through that, it must have been shocking and frightening, not just for yourself, but for you and your family as well.
Yeah, it does really, and I hope no one ever has to go through it, but when you get to that point, it is life-changing, and it's something that will never go away. My life has changed forever as a result of it. You do look at life very differently, but you have to just carry on. And I got to say, MMGY have been incredibly supportive through this whole process, but I have worked every day, bar a couple of days when I was in intensive care, which probably I put the iPad and laptop down for those. But otherwise, you have to keep yourself occupied and you have to keep yourself busy. And that's the beauty of the travel and tourism industry and agency life, is there's always something going on. There's always something exciting going on. So while it's overwhelming, the worst thing you can probably do is jack in the job, sit at home, look at Dr. Google and think of doom and gloom.
Yeah. So keep yourself occupied. That was 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now. You've obviously had a lot of treatment since then. Where are you at right now?
Um, an interesting period. It's sort of a limbo period at the moment. You're right. I've had, I think, 3 different rounds of chemo, a month of radio, countless operations, procedures, biopsies, etc. I'm in a sort of interesting period at the moment where the last tumor was taken out in the end of last year, the end of 2023. My last scan was clear, which is incredible. The first clear scan I've had now since diagnosis. Next one's coming up in June. So I'm in this sort of wonderful limbo period at the moment, from February through to June, where technically I'm cancer free.
I mean, it's absolutely brilliant news, and I'm sure you were chuffed to pieces with it. But as you said, it's going to be with you for the rest of your life now. And when you've been through all these tests and all this surgery and everything, what sort of support have you had? You know, not just your family, but outside of that. And are you? I know you've planned some certainly one event to try and give back a little bit.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's everyone has been incredibly supportive. Obviously, family, but friends, work, everyone rallies around, and you really realize how many wonderful people there are, A, in this world, but B, particularly in the industry. I haven't been very public about my diagnosis, not until recently, when actually you mentioned it. I'm doing a sponsored walk in 2 or 3 weeks' time, walking between the 2 Royal Marsden hospitals. And up until then, I really hadn't told many people in the industry, because it's not, you know, when you go to an industry event, it's not the kind of thing where you sort of just, how are you? Well, actually, I'm struggling with a massive cancer diagnosis. So it didn't really come up in conversation, and I didn't feel I had to tell people because it's not what you bring up in conversation normally. So
No.
everyone has been incredibly supportive. So it's only recently when I really wanted to give something back to the Royal Marsden, which is an incredible organization. And I just thought, how can I do something? So I'm doing this walk with a couple of my friends. My wife is actually joining me. She's supposed to be away on a trip, but she's able to join me. And my 3 young boys. I've got a 15-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old.
Marvelous. So you're raising money for Royal Marsden. It's a long walk. Where can people? I mean, it's going to be a long string. We'll put it in the story, but I presume it's on a Just Giving page for Royal Marsden somewhere.
Yeah, it's actually there's a dedicated site about the Royal. It's called the Royal Marsden March, and it starts in the branch that they have in Chelsea, and it walks down to Sutton. Chelsea is where I have all my operations, and Sutton is where I have all my treatment, and that's how it works for a lot of people. But there is a website dedicated to it, and obviously if you go on there and type in Jonathan Sloan or the Sloan Boys, that's the name of our team, that page will come up. The support so far from the industry, I mean, obviously from family and friends, but for the industry has been mind-blowing. And there's a lot of other people that have come forward saying that how they've been touched by cancer, either directly or indirectly through family. And they've been incredibly supportive.
That doesn't mean to say, thank you. That doesn't mean to say that we couldn't raise some more money. So if people are watching this, please go and have a look at that page. It'll be in our cover story and our summary. Jonathan, I wish you the very, very best of luck, not just in the walk, but in the continuing fight against your illness. I'm convinced you're going to get through it all. Good man, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Graham. As always, great to see you. Thank you.
Cheers.